We're delighted to have partnered with NordVPN again for this season. We partnered with them last year, and they are, of course, a supporter of Rangers FC as an official sponsor there. And best of all, we can give you an exclusive NordVPN deal. If you go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand, you will get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 1 additional month for free. Completely risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee with Nord. And look, I use this product. I would highly recommend it. I used to work in web, so I know how easy it is to steal people's data, especially if you're using a Wi-Fi system that is a shared one, or you're using 4 or 5G, then your details can be out there. With NordVPN, they're absolutely not. And there are other advantages to it as well. You can watch sporting events that maybe aren't being shown in your region. You can purchase flights from different virtual locations, and they do make your flights cheaper. This is very, very useful. What a price is in the UK isn't the same as what a price is in America or a price is on the continent. NordVPN can save you money. You can buy purchasing subscriptions from other countries at a cheaper price, and you protect your data while travelling and using public Wi-Fi. I keep coming back to that. Anyone who's at the hassle of a cancelled card will know what I'm talking about. So all you need to do is go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand, and you'll get a huge discount off your plan and 1 month additional free, completely risk-free. I urge you to do it.
Everyone here at Heart and Hand was saddened, greatly saddened by the news on Thursday of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. I've heard many called her Elizabeth the Great. I don't think that's an unfair description. It obviously caused some differences in the football card over the weekend, hence the reason for a different pod coming to you today as a flagship. We'll explain all, but I would hope that you would join us in wishing the royal family and everyone in the UK well. And what has been the Queen was, a constant in our lives. I'm actually almost struggling to come up with the words because it's difficult to imagine someone who has been alive and in her position for so long. It's difficult to imagine what life's going to be, how that's going to change. It's almost surreal in many ways, even though we all knew it would eventually come. So, yes, all at Heart and Hand, we're saddened by the news. But we go on, we move on as the royal family have done. And I would like to welcome you all to the Heart and Hand preview show. Now, some of our patrons will know exactly what this show is. Others will be listening to it for the first time. The purpose of this show is to preview our upcoming game, discuss the previous game a little bit as well, try and give listeners a little bit more information on the upcoming opponents. Sometimes it's very easy as a Rangers fan, very easy as any football fan, to be solely focused on your own team. There's a lot of football out there. It can be difficult to really, especially when it comes to Scottish football, find the time to sit and watch everything. One of the main reasons for this show was to give Rangers fans that little bit of insight into teams. Not every game where fans will come up and expect to be winning 4 or 5-0 all the time. We hope sometimes to temper those expectations and say, well, actually, this mob are playing quite well. They've got this player and that player. And we are pretty useless at predicting the scores, but we do our best. So if you'd like to hear more of us, as I mentioned, join the Heart and Hand Patreon site. Hopefully you enjoy this listen. But joining me to basically make this show what it is, for any new listeners, you'll soon learn that my job is really, really easy because of these guys. Firstly, it's Mr. Stephen Harrigan. How are you doing, Stephen?
Not bad. Long live the King.
Yes, indeed. Long live the King. And Mr. Kevin Armstrong.
Hello, gents. Stephen says long live the King. Pretty useless. 4-0s. That sounds strangely familiar, Strider.
Yes. Sadly, it does, yes. We like to start the show, as I say, if I look back at the previous game, which, with everything that's went on, almost feels a lot longer than almost a week ago, Stephen. The defeat to Ajax. Now, coming on the back of the game against Celtic as it did, with a little bit of time going past now, I felt and I still feel that we're slightly overreacting to it, but I think I'm in the minority there, so I'm happy to hear that, but hear your views on that. But I think that basically we showed up, we were listless, there was no confidence at all in the team, absolutely nothing, and we got scalped by a very good side who generally start their Champions League groups pretty quickly, and we fell right into that as well.
We did. Look, we came up against a very good technical side, a side that start well. And as we talk about the opposition that we're going to face in Wednesday night, they're another team that start well. And probably every team in this group likes to start well apart from us. So that's an issue we faced on the Saturday before. We faced it on Wednesday as well. And I think other than the obvious start of the 4-0 scoreline, a couple of other ones jump out at you. The 25% possession. And obviously running 6k less than the other team when you don't have the ball for the vast majority of that game, that tells you probably more than the scoreline in many ways, and it's something that really sticks out. If you're into our XG, and I know you're not, Alex, but our XG could have probably been and was generated by taking centres. I know they're a very good side, but I thought we gifted them it. The second half became a bit of a mercy game, and it was embarrassing in large parts for a number of reasons. What's alarming me, and I'm sure which is most other Rangers fans, when you look at the same kind of core of players, that group being 3-0 down at half time, 4 times under a year now, and that's twice in the last week, it's concerning. So there's clearly a problem there that we're going to have to get to the bottom of. On the goals, I mean, where did we really start? We've talked about this on the show ad nauseum, the set plays and what we feel. My personal feeling still exists that I don't think we're aggressive enough. I don't think we have the players in there that can go and be aggressive. But we had a warning, just like the PSV game before. We had a warning. Ajax had clearly identified that as an area of weakness, and they exploited it. And we didn't correct it, and we got punished. The second, for me, the thing that's telling about it is a lack of shape and a lack of effort. They have so much space. We are actually telling them where to go. The only thing that's unlucky about it is probably the fact that it comes off James Sands. But other than that, it's an abysmal goal we lose. We've not got a good shape. We've not making it difficult for them in a kind of low defensive block. And then the third, awful defending. Tav, who's got this habit of trying to nick it, and you'll get away with it in the Scottish League and even in certain levels of Europe because he's got that athleticism. But when you come up against somebody like Berwyn the other night and you're trying to nick it, and you get left for dead for that. I know he was taken off as a precaution. Was the game done at half time? But he could have been taken off at half time for that alone. It's criminal defending. And it starts with coaching for me. I think if you look at the average positions for that first half, the gaps even between the centre halves and the lack of any kind of defensive mid dropping in there to offer cover is criminal. It's not just in possession. They were so much better, but we've not got a good shape off the ball. Out of possession is really worrying me as well. At the moment, we made it so easy for them. And I said that there was minimal gaps in games where when you have a minimal gap, you're kind of utilising the space for the teams to go into. As I said, we advertised and we showed them where to go. And I don't think you can dress up. Or off the ball in the last 2 games has been pretty poor. Second half, we were better. I think mainly due to 2 things. The fact that we couldn't be any worse and Ajax took a wee bit of pity on us. I think the goal that we had disallowed, Borna Barisic, is probably a perfect summary of where we're at currently. Kent, along with several other players, are not doing the basics. We've stopped working hard. I think that goes back to the distance run lesson at Ajax last Wednesday evening. That's due to hard work, a lot of it, and putting in the effort and trying to, bridge the talent gap by putting in the hard work and getting in teams at your opposition's faces. We've not been doing that. That's what frustrated me so much about the goals. But Kent's part in that goal, it was lazy. I don't think there's anything else for it. To me, watching that, last Wednesday we were still finger pointing on a number of occasions, but we still had players out there who didn't seem to know or understand what their instruction or role in the team is. Kent looks frustrated, he looks disinterested, and the speed, the confidence in any kind of structure that we've had has been sucked out our side. Really does point to far bigger issues and a couple of bad results for me. We're now at a stage where we're discussing Borna Barisic having the player with the most fight in him in our team. And I think even saying that loud, it frightens the life out of me because we know that's certainly not the case. We've got the evidence to back that up. But at the moment, we're so low in so many things, but just the basics, and the manager getting his message across. This was the second game in a row he informed us post-match that the players weren't acting on instruction or carrying out instruction. He talked about getting in the zones and they weren't doing that. So there's not a lot of positives to take out. It was a game where, look, I expected us to go and lose, but it's how you go and lose sometimes. And we lost by really making it all too easy for them. Set piece goal, a goal where we're telling that we go through centre defence. We've had no defensive mid cover. Players all over the park just look shambolic. And if you can get that kind of graphic up, if anybody's got the ability to do it, to look at the average positions in the first half, it doesn't look like a well-coached, a well-structured team. And I get a lot of the times, once you step over that line, once the players do that, the illness is on them and they'll try and overcompensate sometimes, get dragged out of position. That's fine. But there just seems a lack of cohesion and an understanding. If Connor Golson's going to have to push over and have a hand, or give that right hand side a hand, if Scott Wright, who was playing last Wednesday, pushes in and pushes up a wee bit and kind of goes walkies as he tends to do and not keep to that out wide position, then you're going to have a Lundstrom that drops in there. And last season we were really good at doing that. It was seamless at times, whereas this season, like so many things, we can't really seem to get the bottom of it. And I say the set pieces thing, it's not going away because we don't have the players in our team now to go and be that aggressive force at set plays. So we're going to have to correct it in other matters. I think the break that we've had will probably have done everybody good. But yeah, another 4-0 defeat, and it's another one where the performance levels are concerning.
Kev, what about yourself? What was your, you've had a bit of time now to digest that. Where are you at with it?
I wasn't as angry as I was when we visited the East End of Glasgow, because I knew we had it in us to go there and get doing, but when we went to Amsterdam, you could see it coming. You really could. For any younger listeners, this is what the 90s felt like. Although in the 90s, to be fair, we would have finished 4-1 because VAR wouldn't have chopped that goal off, so you usually get a wee consolation with that, but Stephen has always covered most of the bases. How the manager can think that swapping one player, and that player is putting Scott Wright in, to a team that absolutely scalped by Celtic was somehow going to change, going to Ajax. I'm baffled by that. I don't see, it's not a massive change there. I don't see what was miraculously going to change over a couple of days. But I do agree with Stephen. I don't think that we have the physicality in the side.
I'll say this, Kev. Sorry to cut across you here, but that's also only one player removed from the team that went to PSV and put in a performance which we were all very rightly lauding. So I don't have too many issues with the manager saying, I've got confidence in you boys, because, mere 2 weeks ago, you were showing me you were much better than that. That's only one player removed. That's Scott Wright for Tom Lawrence. Are we really saying that, in both of those games, against Celtic, against Ajax, are we really saying that Davis and or Wright were so bad that we went from the PSV level to that? That's, from a manager's perspective, I don't see what he done particularly wrong with the team selection there. And I know that's people will be probably shouting and screaming because they're like, well, he picked Scott Wright. That's, he's done that in plenty of big games and it's worked. So, that's not really the issue. I think that to say we should have made wholesale changes, I don't see any reason why Gio couldn't have looked at the Celtic game and thought that was an aberration.
Sorry, Cut and Alex, see on that. See, in all essence, the game plan, if you're the manager and you're planning a couple of weeks in advance and looking at these two fixtures, the game plan that you're setting out for Parkhead and for Amsterdam are pretty similar. There might be wee tactical tweaks and obviously different instructions to set plays and things like that, but for all intents and purposes, the game plan should pretty much be the same in how you execute it. The basics of it, the fundamentals would have been there, because you're not going to have a lot of time to train. We coming back from the start of the game, then the travelling and all that factored in. So there shouldn't have been too much carryover. the thing that has carried over is the performance more than the performance levels more than probably the players, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, there's some confidence. Sorry, Kev, we're stepping all over you here. I apologise for that. And there's definitely been some confidence issues. I think you could see that a mile away. But no, that was just in response to that, Kev, where you're saying you don't understand why there wasn't more changes made. I can get that because it was only a couple of weeks ago that pretty much same team, one player removed, was doing well. So, and then we said on this show, Stephen specifically said that I wasn't at the Ross County game. I'd only saw highlights of that one, sadly. But Stephen was saying after that game, it's probably Scott Wright's best performance in the Rangers shirt. You have to take the level of opposition into account, absolutely. But so far this season, arguably, he's shown more than Matondo has on the right, or Tillman has on the right. Lawrence wasn't available, who's probably the one you wanted to have. So, I can understand why he played him, but it's just there was no legislating for that level of performance, really, was there?
Well, I was going to say that wasn't a go at Scott Wright. I'm not as down on Scott Wright as many other people are. I don't think he's got the attacking output, funnily enough, that say Kent has. But if you look at his numbers, he delivers more in numbers with goals and probably assists that Kent had in the same time period. My point was more around the physicality in the team. I looked at the people tracking runners at Parkhead, and it was pretty non-existent. I think we had Lundstrom, Kamara and Davis, and none of them are going to... I sort of see what they're going, right, but we've been there before and been overrun in the midfield. And Ajax are similar. They're constantly on the move. And I said, I just don't think putting Scott Wright out there and putting Tillman in the middle was going to really give us more legs in midfield, because Tillman is one of these players, I think he's still young, he's still learning. He wasn't very good at Parkhead, but nobody was, and I didn't think he was very good here. I jokingly said to you in the chat, maybe hold hang fire with that 5 million or whatever it is we need to pay for him just now. But I say my issue was around the midfield. We're just getting played through far too easily. We've spoken before on here about how if Leon King is now considered part of the first team squad, then surely he's an option to come in. And again, that's not a slight on Sands. I think he's done okay in there. With a wonderful game away at PSV. But I just think if you get the push Sands forward, gives you that wee bit more physicality in the middle of the park, sort of the job that Ryan Jack used to be able to do for us. I think the evidence is now mounting up that Ryan Jack can no longer do that job. I just think that was sort of message of tracking the one change from an absolute shambles at Parkhead. And I know we've discussed at length on here before the recruitment and the options that we have. And when you look at our bench, sometimes there isn't a lot, and sometimes we are picking players on past glories. Ryan Kent is probably the main one. I'm more of... I've never really been on the Van Bronckhorst train, for anyone that's never listened to our show before. I used to get a wee bit of slagging for that when we were in the Europa League final and stuff like that. They're just signs that worried me. And now they're starting to appear. And again, the only other thing I would say is I would agree that he took Tav off. Right, see if Tav has been injured and carrying a knock, when you get absolutely scalped, take him off, rest him up. Nothing good is going to come of Tav staying on the pitch. But I would also take Čolak off. Again, I mentioned on the show before, and I get slated for it in the comments, that is not a game for Čolak. He doesn't hold the ball well enough. He doesn't link the play well enough. And again, that's not me slating him and saying he's a bad player. I likened him to Chris Boyd, where Chris Boyd would run riot in the SPFL when we've got 75-80% possession, creating chances, he'll get goals. But if you put Chris Boyd up, a lone man up front, you're as well sitting him down in the stand because he's not going to do anything. Personally, when it wasn't working in the second half, I would have put Alfie on. Now, somebody's going to jump in a minute and say, Alfie didn't deserve that. Right? I would argue that putting somebody on when you're 3 or 4-0 down away in Europe is not a reward, because it's not as if you're going to get involved and hopefully get them on and get a goal or whatever. It's just about getting fitness in the legs, because Ettenham to Čolak right now, we're turning it to Alfie, and we're not turning to Alfie now with 45 minutes in the tank or half an hour in the tank. We're then turning it on with no minutes in the tank and barely kicked a ball. But as I say, just like Stephen said, striker, it was the manner of the goal we lost. See if you're warned a couple of minutes before from a corner and then you see from a corner, it's on you. Right? It's your fault. Now, I know as Rangers supporters that we will always look to say, like, we could have Maradona score that wonder goal that he did against England, right? And as Rangers supporters, if that was us, we'd be saying, oh, we should have done better here, we should have done better there, rather than saying what a goal it was. But I say it was just the basic errors. Too many basic errors. We've seen it at the weekend. It was repeated midweek. And when you're against the levels of, it pains me to say it, but the two teams full of quality, you get away with that against St Johnstone or Dundee or something like that. You don't get away with it against the two teams that we've just faced. It's something that we'll seriously need to look at. I did quite like the way that we set up with the ultra defensive model in the second half, the damage limitation, if you want to call it that. Memories of Walter in Europe, who was never short of doing that, although he would do it for the 90 minutes. It's something that we seriously might need to consider looking at going forward, because we're going to face a very good Napoli side, extremely good, albeit not exactly informed Liverpool side. This is going to be a real tough test, because we mentioned at the start of the show that fixtures have been rescheduled. We could quite easily come out on the end of a wrong result Wednesday night, and then I think it might be Tynecastle and then Anfield after that. So it's fasten your seatbelt time, because this could get a wee bit rougher before it gets better.
Good, but we'll see. I'm we've had this discussion before on here. I'm one for complaining about it after it happens, rather than worrying too much about it happening, if you get my meaning. But let's move on now. It's a bit of a negative start to the show, and it's going to be a little bit negative later on as we discuss things. I think that's the very strange thing about this season so far for Rangers fans. If you'd said to us at the start of the season that we'll qualify for the Champions League, we would all thought we'd have been pretty ecstatic about that. Now we're in there, we get one down, and it's along with some other factors, it's suddenly a concern. But next up, Stephen, is Napoli, a team currently sitting top of Serie A, albeit it's on goal difference. 6 games in, I believe they're 4 wins, 2 draws, 14 points. They're sitting on. There's actually, when you look at their league results, there's a couple of results in there. Lecce at home, for example, I think they drew 1 each or 0-0 with them. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. A couple of results in there that they probably would be slightly disappointed in. But overall, they've made a great start to the season, and they absolutely scalped Liverpool last week. They've done that before, mind you. And they've got a cracking home record in the Champions League. But what are we expecting here? Are we looking... How good a team is this? Because when the draw was made, I think a lot of people who maybe haven't watched a lot of Italian football recently might have thought that Napoli were the ones we'd be fighting with for a third place. If we were being realistic, and maybe people like me being ultra positive thought second might have been a possibility. I think everybody's going to have written that off now. But as this team, have we slept on them a little bit as a fan base? Because are they a lot better than we've given them credit for?
Well, I'll put it to you. I think that was a couple of weeks ago. I kind of work a couple of weeks ahead, starting to look at teams, and I think I put in the group chat, is Napoli the best team in our group? On current form, I think you would have to agree with that. I think because they're not a big flashy name, you're not, your stereotypical Italian giants like AC Milan and things like that, then yeah, they can fall under the radar. But this is an exceptional side. It's a side, if you look at what they've done since Spalletti's come in, they've still maintained that 4-3-3 played with last season. They keep a focus on specific profiles and kind of key roles, but they've changed a wee bit. Last season under Spalletti, it was more about containment. This season, it's very much transitioned to be proactive than reactive. That he's taken the next step in his development on where he wants his side to go, and they've been very aggressive in their approach to games. As I said earlier, they're that type of team that like to come at you from the first whistle and really stretch the game. They've been dominant, obviously in the Champions League. Their first halves in games are the ones that they're very notably dominant in. So yeah, it's difficult to I think on current form, I would certainly say the best team in the group. When they build up, they kind of go 4-2 in numbers, and they kind of focus on freeing up a fullback on either side and get, them to carry the ball that the opponents have. And they press intensely. I've watched the Liverpool game back about 3 times now. I watched it live, as many of us, I'm sure, did, after our game the other night. I know Liverpool are not the best at pressing at the moment. I know they're a wee bit disjointed, but they still really gave them tons of problems just by their pressing them. Osimhen, who's going to miss this game, is a big miss for him because he's got a great technical ability, but he's got a real good physicality as well. And he's that player that can hold the ball up for them. He did it in that game. He can lay the passes on for his teammates. And that makes him incredibly difficult to press against. The challenge is, obviously, we're going down the levels in terms of talent and money spent. So that's where we're having to kind of plug that talent gap again. A big part of their ability to kind of dominate games is to make opponents, force them into errors, and through that relentless pressure. I think anyone who watched the Liverpool game and saw how Jose Gomez especially get caught out will understand this. What worries me is that, as I said, they're very good in the first half of matches, and that's generally when we're at our worst. They tend to press man-to-man down the side of the pitch. So if a defender attempts to kind of play a low pass, Lobotka, he can be in the right place at the right time, he'll intercept it, and then he looks to begin a counter-attack in a kind of final third. Where they've kind of tailed off and they've had a wee bit of criticism, but they were playing earlier on today, they got an 89th minute winner. The criticism that's been levelled at them is they've not went for the full 90. So I think that's what Spalletti's trying to get his teams to doing it. And look, if they're winning 3-0 by half time, the game's more or less over anyway. I think when we do attack them, we've got to be sure to leave enough defenders back, because I said that they're really good and quick at doing with transition, and they can return attack. We're going to have to. I wouldn't say we've got too many over athletic players in terms of pace, and that's probably our biggest fear. There is going to be times, especially being at home, and especially now, where it's going to be a game where it's going to be all Rangers fans, and it's a game that we really need to take something from if we get any expectation or hope of playing European football after Christmas. So we're going to have to push it at certain points in this match, and they'll be patient, and then they'll spring attack on us. They've got Krivesta, number 77 as we'll call him, and Zelensky. They're very skilled at kind of finding the run to the forward players. And that really does that. They really showed them up against Liverpool. Liverpool, I would say, are a very attack-minded team, and they were able to find hole after hole. I say when they press, they also counter-press just as intensely, and that allows them to kind of keep sustained pressure on their opponents, and they've got a really good defensive record as a return from that. What they'll do is their players will mark the nearest open player, and then the player closest to the ball forces the player one way, and then that will try and reduce the number of potential outlets for the defender to have. I say it's a very intense type of pressure. It's clearly something that Spalletti's worked on over a period of time since he's been there. But that's why they can maintain the attacks and maintain such high possession in games. I noticed in the Liverpool game as well, they broke the trend for kind of possession, but most of that possession stats were Liverpool in the second half, and Liverpool did end up having quite a decent go of it as second half go. But by that point, the games were kind of more or less done. Their midfielders are what you would class as both technically very good and strong physically. One such player is Augusta. He impressed at Marseille, impressed at Villarreal, and he really has taken to Serie A like a duck to water. He's joined Napoli on loan from Fulham, and he was sensational breaking up playing that game at Liverpool. I'm not quite sure why he's on loan from Fulham. I've not found a reason for that yet, but it doesn't seem like a good bit of business on Fulham's part for me. I say he's got great ability to win the ball back, and then he can break the lines. He's got really powerful running. He's got decent footwork. And Napoli used him in there to create just physical matchups in their favour. They did it time and time again in that game. And he really just bullied Henderson for most of the game and any other kind of midfielder that was in there, and Salah as well. Salah was trying to get back to him, and he just couldn't get near him. He's very strong on the ball. And I say he's got that ability, but he's a very rare player. And I did see that Napoli have got a 15 million option to make the deal permanent, so I'd be very surprised if they don't do that. Another way they excel is to progress the ball through the use of wingers. I spoke about their fullbacks, but what they'll do is that they'll get the wingers to drop deep, and that will create a kind of overload in the wide areas, and then that allows them to be kind of calm on the ball, and then they can get the ball further up the pitch and be in good positions. The Georgian Lionel Messi, Christian Villa, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he's known as the Georgian Lionel Messi. He was signed from Dinamo Batrimi just 4 months after moving back to Georgia. He was playing at Rubin Kazan, and obviously the contract gets suspended. He's 21 years old, and he scored 8 times in 11 outings in the Georgian League, and then Napoli made their move. Plays off the left. He averages 33 passes per 90 minutes. And his arrival has really changed that. I spoke about the team's transition since Spalletti's been there, but he's the main focus of it because he's really changed how they attack and what they can do. You get a lot of teams that walk for kind of positional dominance. He'll run away from the ball, and that's why he's so effective. If he doesn't carry the ball into penalty area, he'll stretch the opposition by going into kind of areas deep on the left-hand side of the penalty area. And again, it might be a kind of cliche, but defenders don't want to get dragged out there, but he drags them out there. He drags them out of the areas of the park that they don't want to get pulled into. He's got electric pace, he's got great skill. And what they do is then Napoli are able to get their 1-on-1s in the kind of final third. And a lot of their goals have come from that. They're a team that goes to the byline, but they create situations to really give them matchups all over the park. And that's where they're very smart. And I say these situations don't occur if the kind of wide forwards are getting drawn to the ball and then condensing the play so it becomes congested in the middle of the park. I say they're excellent transitional situations, but they've been pretty decent against low blocks. I know you mentioned a couple of results they had, but they come up against perceived low blocks, and Kev talked about is that something we should try and do for this match. But they've been pretty good at tailing their way around it. So I think even going down that route is going to present us with challenges. And again, what they use for theirs are kind of underlapping runs from the blindside opposition midfielders into the box. And that's something, runners going in behind, we've faced problems with in the last couple of games as well. When the ball's in a wide area, you look at how we set up kind of narrow, and we're really preparing for deliveries into the box. So Napoli will keep a player high and wide. That leaves a kind of massive open space if we were to do that. So they can just exploit there. And then from there, a player who is even already in the box and can't really be seen by the opposition midfielders or our midfielders, and he'll kind of roam into that space to receive the ball. So they're very good at crossing, and I say they do like to do the kind of matchups. And a kind of final note regarding the possession and control, you look at some of their brightest attacking moments, and they do a lot of surprises, what I would call them, quick balls over the top, I say from a midfield runner and behind. And they kind of passes generally happen in the wide kind of half spaces, whether it be Polanto, Zelensky, Osimhen, who's missing out for this one. They'll kind of sprint away, and then the receiving player would often be close to the box, and then it can drive a kind of low cross across the pitch for another player. It's usually Osimhen is that focal point at the top to kind of put it away, and they do them at kind of random moments. There's no pattern to play. But it's certainly something to do. I say the good news for us is in Nigerian Osimhen is going to miss it. He went off injured against Liverpool. He's likely going to be replaced by Giovanni Simeone, obviously son of Diego. He's on loan from Hellas Verona. He's got 17 goals in 35 games last season for them. Another option could be Rasbordi. He played and scored an 89th minute winner in Napoli's 1-0 win over Spienza today, the Sundays we record it. But he's more natural at playing kind of number 10 roles opposed to being a striker. And something else that should worry us if that's not enough, they've converted 4 set pieces goals and 1 penalty kick so far this season. So they're a team that's really a constant threat from all situations imaginable. And you look at their set play routines, a lot of their success has come through that. I think they're top of Serie A for the expected goals from set plays and converted goals from set plays. And that should probably send chills down every Rangers fan's spine. It certainly does me. One of the things they do is they get the South Korean defender Kim. They look for him in corner situations, and they try and create space at the back post for him. They'll use all the other players will run towards the front post as the ball's coming in. Then that usually causes his marker to kind of take a wee step forward, at least get drawn in. He takes a bait. It's happened a few times that I've seen, and then that just creates space at the back post for Kim to attack at the header, mostly for the most part uncongested. Against sides who play man-marking, that usually means that there's nobody in that 6-yard box to attempt to win the header. So I know we've had discussion on this show about Zono or man-marking, but when we're playing Napoli, I actually think Zono's the best option, but we have to have that aggressive touches. That's the worrying part. That's where we have to find it. So you've got that theme with the player attacking the back post with the rest of the attack go to the front post. They've altered their ways. It's not the same all the time, obviously. And really their objective for all corners is to just find space at that back post. They'll look for flicks at the front post. And also Men's been there, but Simeone will probably be in there. But they tailor it a wee bit. They're also good from throw-ins. They've caused a threat there. Augusta will probably purposely stand in the way of his own defender. Usually Lorenzo's marker if they're on that side of the pitch. Lorenzo's the captain, and then he'll have kind of time and space to receive the ball and mark. He'll attack the space in which Augusta then vacates. And then you've got to then deal with him, and both defenders will have to get in front of him. It's just that wee bit of attention to detail, that extra bit that makes him such a threat in any state of play. And I think that's what we're really up against. We're going to have to be switched on absolutely every moment in this game, because I say once it goes out with throw-ins, we got punished at Parkhead for got to sleep in throw-ins. This is a team that have got routines, have got set plays. They'll like to go wide. They'll like to take us on 1v1. So they'll like to get matchups in the middle of the park. It's a very formidable side we're going up against. I think what we can hope for is possibly they underestimate us a wee bit. I don't think it's any great thing to say that we probably look and are the weakest team by some distance in this group in terms of personnel. So maybe that'll be a factor. But when they're in top form, like they were, that 4-1 win over Liverpool in the opening game of this group, they're really hard to deal with, and we're going to be faced with a real unique set of challenges, I say, from open play, from set plays, just generally all round. They're an excellent team, and anybody who's sleeping on them now, anybody that goes to Ibrox on Wednesday night and thinks, I say that they'll be one of the kind of stuffy, typical Italian sides, they're going to be bitterly disappointed.
Disappointed might not be quite the word for it. I've mentioned this before on our show. And first, what I'd would like to say firstly, and I should have said this before, for any new listeners, you'll have heard quite a few pronunciations of names from Stephen there and be wondering who he's talking about. You will work it out, trust me. But Stephen will tell you himself it's not his strong suit. But as you can tell, he certainly knows plenty about the teams and gives us loads of information every single time. Sometimes it's kind of ridiculous, as I'm sure Kev will agree. I've mentioned before, I actually got to see Napoli playing last season. I ended up seeing them playing against Atalanta and Bergamo when I was over in Italy. It was a day that sadly we lost to Celtic, actually, Ibrox. I'll be honest, Stephen, the game being moved to the Wednesday, see, with no away fans, I'm slightly disappointed because their fans are mental. There wasn't that many of them, The Atlanta Stadium's not that big, but they were absolutely great to watch. Crazy, but great to watch. And I'm slightly disappointed there won't be any away fans, if I'm honest, because they would have gave quite the show. But that's one of those things. You expect then from their team just the one change from the team that faced Liverpool. They made quite a few changes. It's kind of crazy that guys like Ndombele and Lozano are the rotation options, isn't it? And they made quite a few changes at the weekend. But, Osimhen being out, replaced by Simeone, that's probably the only one we expect to see different from the Liverpool game.
Yeah, I know Simeone came on today. I think it was about 67th minute, something like that. But I generally has a feeling that they were resting him for us. But I do expect the same team, apart from obviously Osimhen, miss it out. That's what I would class as our strongest team at the moment. And I think if you're Napoli, they're very much a side that wants to get their points on the board as early as possible and navigate their way through this group. So yeah, I think that they've rotated players out for some of the league games. They had a favourable fixture, if you could call it that, today. They've managed to navigate that. So yeah, I'm expecting very much the same. 10 players that we've seen against Liverpool with that one change in the forward area.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, they might mix it up a little bit, but it seems unlikely. Kev, you're here to remind us, and you mentioned earlier when you were talking about the game. Welcome, some of the younger fans. Welcome to being a '90s Rangers fan, and we have joked quite a bit that we've just been waiting on the other shoe to fall in Europe, haven't we? All these guys like ourselves who grew up watching the 9-in-a-row squad have some horrible moments in Europe. We've been waiting on this other shoe to fall. What is going on here? How are Rangers this good in Europe? That's not supposed to happen. Remind us, Kev, bring us right back down to earth with some of our more, I want to say forgettable, but we will never forget them, moments against Italian teams in the Champions League.
Well, actually, you know what they say, you can make numbers say whatever you want, mate. And I've actually had a look back, right, because we've never played Napoli in a competitive fixture. And I've looked back at the times we've played Italian teams in group stages. It did take away the Fiorentina game, but we all remember that one. Back in 2006-2007, under Paul Le Guen, we played Livorno. We won 3-2, which was nice. I thought that's not a bad start. That'll inject some positivity into this pod because it would be quite negative. Before that, we played Inter Milan back in 2005-2006, where we were defeated 1-0 away. If I remember rightly, that was behind closed doors, and I want to say deflected free kick. But we did manage to get a 1-1 draw at home in that special night that sent us through. And from there, this is where the alarm bells start ringing. We of course had the games against Parma, but they were qualifiers. This was very, very 90s Rangers in Europe. We played Juventus back in 95-96. We lost 4-1 away and lost 4-0 at home. When it comes to the Champions League, the last time we made the group stages was 2010-11. The 3 home games that we played there, we beat Bursaspor 1-0. Stephen Naismith getting the goal. A special night in Ricky Foster's career was back on the 20th of October 2010. We played Valencia at home. We drew 1-1. Edu scored both goals. And the last time we played at home in the Champions League, Wayne Rooney scored a penalty in the 87th minute to give Man United a 1-0 victory. So a wee bit of a mixed bag. And the only thing that I will add to Stephen's stats is the referee is Antonio Miguel Matthew Lohez. There you go, Stephen. That's a 1-1 for pronunciations. And he refereed us when we beat Feyenoord 1-0 in the Europa League back in September 2019.
It's nice to have a referee that actually we talk about having one of our positive results of late.
I think did he not do Dortmund as well? One of the Dortmund games, I think the Ibrox one.
You may very well be right as well.
No, Dortmund at Ibrox was that Spanish referee. Is that him, the baldy guy?
Him?
Yeah.
Essentially the Spanish. What do you call him? Yeah, he's mental. Yeah,
he's mental.
Is it him for this game? Well, then that's interesting. Yeah. Remember he was the one because it looked as though I felt in the game against Dortmund. I think you guys agreed. It looked like the chopped off goal.
Yeah,
it looked like he was sort of. He was watching it and shrugging his shoulders and all that with the monitor. It almost had to be talked into chopping off Kent's goal, didn't he?
He seems to like a card. He's got a few cards looking at his kind of...
He loves... Do you know what? He's one of those refs... I don't know. You see them at every level, even at amateur level. You see him before the game and all that, and he's trying to have a wee chat and a joke with players and stuff like that. A lot of the time it's just like, it's never going to work, man. The minute that whistle goes, any friendship is gone there. You know what I mean? That's just how it goes. But he tries to be that guy, which I suppose is probably a wee bit better than what we get off the Scottish refs most of the time, if we're honest. So for new listeners, the people who know the show will know that we now move on to Stephen Harrigan's 5 things to look out for. And number 1 of these, Stephen, the current performance levels can't or shouldn't be ignored. Now, I just want to clear this up here. When you say current performance levels, are you really only just talking about the last 2 games, or is it going further than that?
I think you could, but I'd be at pains to at the moment. I think the Hibs game was an aberration. I don't think we played well, but I think we all agreed that had Morelos not stupidly got himself sent off, we'd have left Easter Road with 3 points. And any time you can do that, you have to be happy. So the last 2 games have been concerning. We don't know. I mean, is it lack of confidence, a lack of desire from players, a lack of clear instructions from the manager? I don't think it's a lack of a good game plan. I think in both Parkhead and in the Johan Cruyff Arena, if you looked at the game plan in paper per se, you could see what we were trying to achieve, but the application levels weren't there. Certainly a lack of confidence, but we're not doing the basics. When you're not confident, you have to sometimes take a step back and go and really work it hard at the fundamentals. And that's where I don't think we've done a good enough job. I spoke about the quality of goals that we lost last Wednesday, the opening group match, and it really concerned me. They're all different type of goals, even the last one. It's just another are the latest examples, I say, of what happens when you're careless with the football at this level of competition. You get punished, and you get punished severely. That's another lesson that we have to really take on board, especially for this game coming up. And to be honest, all the games in this group, we should say it. But look, the game is going to tell us a lot about who we are and where we are as a group. We have everything to play for on Wednesday night. So in the short term, it'll determine where we are and how we can go forward. For now, at the moment, we've lost the respect. Our reputation is in tatters. We even have Ajax's official Twitter kind of ripping the arse at us a wee bit. We look and we're acting very soft. And we're going to be tested mentally again. So the chips are down. We have to see what the players stand for, what they can come up with. They need to play for the fans. I've mentioned that the unique circumstances that have created are going to be a full Ibrox, full of Rangers fans. Every bit we needed to help us. This is a huge ask, but we reserved our best football for European nights, and we'll be hoping that's once more. But I think the players have to start playing for themselves again. There just seems to be a disconnect between what the manager's asking them to do and the players taking the instruction on board and going with it. And I don't know if you can solely put that down to confidence, because we're not digging ourselves out the holes. We're not, when games are getting away from us, we're not going up, making it very difficult, and even doing what teams do to us domestically, where they just turn into a bit of a war. You slow the play down any way you do, and you just get your shape back, and you have people taking command. When games are, when we lost the first goal on Wednesday night, and it was the same on Saturday, you were immediately sitting there going, there's another one coming up not long after, because it just seemed to be a swarm. There was nothing that we were doing to kind of stop that flow. And I know it's difficult against very good players, especially an Ajax team that moved the ball, but it's still an Ajax team that, they've had a transitional summer as well, and we never really got to grips with it. And sometimes, if you're not going to win the game, you have to stop the opposition doing what they did to us in Wednesday night. And that's, I suppose, what disappointed me. At the moment, I think the manager's under severe pressure, both long term and kind of short term. And it's just the manner of defeats is very damning on the group. I think we all expect a golfing class in the Champions League. And had we been 5 points clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership, then these results would have been viewed in isolation. But now they're going to fan the flames of whatever people negative want to take from it. We can't view these results in isolation now, because they're coming too frequent, and the manner of the scorelines as well. I spoke about, earlier on, it's the first time in a year that we've been, 3-0 down at half time, this group. There's not many Rangers sides that can go out and say that. That's a pretty indicting fact. So we have to correct it. We can't ignore them, because it's the most important thing. That's what we can't accept. You cannot accept losing a game, but we're not even laid a glove on any of these two teams. We haven't looked as if we've been up for the fight. And then as soon as we faced a wee bit of adversity, we've kind of just curled up into our shell. And people say, we came out and played better in the second half of games and things like that. Games are done by that point. And you've seen even in the last Wednesday there, we had that goal disallowed, and Ajax went up and toyed with us a wee bit more and put another on the back of the net. It was embarrassing at times, and it's embarrassing for the effort levels and the perceived effort levels that are being shown at the moment. And I say, what the manager's asking me to do, I don't think it's wrong, but the message doesn't seem to be getting carried, and that's as concerning as anything else. But hopefully, this break will have done everybody the world a good, and we can reassess things. But we have to get it back. We have to, if confidence isn't there, you have to work hard. And if you don't think you're working hard, you need to keep working harder, because that's the only way we're going to get any resemblance of a result in Wednesday night.
Kev, you rightly had a bit of a go at me during the game on Wednesday, because I did. Anybody that listens to the prediction show will know I did predict a Rangers win, and it was mainly because I had some confidence in this. We've seen this squad have some bad moments and turn that around. Well, I say this squad. Mostly last season's squad, there is a few changes in here, obviously. But, I had some faith that the Celtic game was a very bad day at the office. We were up against a good team, but a team I felt was around about PSV's level. And we would be able to, go and do to them what we did to PSV to an extent. I'll put my hands up here. Is it fair to say, Kev, that Ajax were way ahead at PSV's level, or did we just make them look better? What was your kind of take that way?
I think it's a bit of both. I think we all said when we put out PSV, we had a good bit of luck on our side. Poor goalkeeping, poor defending. And I don't mean as in a full team, it was individual errors that cost PSV. If we'd lost that two-legged affair in that manner, we would have said we could have won that. That we were 2 errors away from doing it, because say you make your own luck and mod balls and all that sort of jazz. But I do think had we played Ajax immediately after PSV, we might have gave a better of account of ourselves. I just think that we come off the Parkhead shambles of performance. I say, even if that had been a one-off, right, and that hadn't happened, we might have done a wee bit better in Amsterdam. But the fact that it was the same performance as February, I think they just had that woe is me feeling that all the heads went down, nobody came out of it looking good, and like we said on that game, the game was done by half time. Right, the game was done, and then yet again, an individual error makes it 4 and gives them that wee bit of extra shine. So then we're in a bad place. We're going to Ajax, who've got their tails up. They're a Champions League side, right? There's no getting away from it. They're experienced enough, and they've got the history in the competition, recent history, and obviously past glories of winning the thing. But I just think that the couple of weeks we've had, it's been a lot of negativity, just around the club in general. I say with the Alfie situation that we sort of weren't aware of during the summer. I think the last thing we heard was Alfie was progressing well, and in September was mooted as his comeback time. Then he sort of comes back early, everything's going well. Then he's out of the team, out of the squad, not travelling to PSV. That's negativity. Then with the whole ticket pricing debacle, and I say that then with the Parkhead performance, which was, we'll not go over it again, but it was atrocious. And then I say we play Ajax, and they're very good, right? I think they're a level above PSV. Certainly going forward, because we can't really comment on how they were defensively because we didn't really test them. So I think it's a wee bit of both. And as you say, just to add to it, I don't think the manager helped himself with the support. Stephen was talking about he's under pressure when he comes out and says that we need to spend hundreds of millions to compete at this level. It might have been one of those things that he sort of tried to say something else and it's come out like that, but that was all the headlines. And as I say, all the time, Fred, that we're always compared to the other side of the city, no matter what we do. And on one hand, David, they go at Real Madrid, right? They get beat 3-0, but they had a go. The manager comes out and says, more or less, we don't respect anyone. We hate to play our game. We're going to give it the best goal we can. We get a tonking. We don't get out our own half. And then we say, we can't compete at this level. So I just think there's a negative cloud or clouds hanging over the club just now. And I think that's also added to the pressure on the manager.
I'm very glad you brought that quote up, Kev. Very glad, actually. Before we move on to point 2, when you look at what he said we can't compete financially. That was kind of the question he was asking. Can he compete financially with these teams? Because he was answering a question on Becky Ives' question, I believe, was something along the lines of, are you frustrated at not being given any money to, help with this challenge, or something along those lines, wasn't it? It was about the cash, and he was talking about financially you can't compete with these teams. He's not the first Rangers manager to have said this. Funnily enough, not the first after a defeat in the Champions League to have said it either. Walter Smith done it a couple of times, notably after we get humped by Uniria, who is Chenzi, or however you pronounce that lot, I can't quite remember. After they beat us 4-1, Walter was talking in the media about, we can't compete at this level at the moment, finances, etc. He wasn't using that as an excuse for the game, and I don't believe that Van Bronckhorst was using it for an excuse for the game either. Just answering the question that was put to him and talking about how at that point in time his squad, Walter Smith was talking at that point in time, his squad, what he had available and the form they were in, couldn't compete at that level, but he used those same sort of words. He was talking about finances as well. He's not the first Rangers manager to do that, and I think Van Bronckhorst's quote has been taken a little out of context, and he's used as another stick to beat him with, and I think that's it's one of those things. There's no nuance when it comes to this, and I think you pretty much said that there, Kev. Nobody's looking at the quote and actually analysing it. They're just hearing the words and screaming about it. So that one, I was bothered by the reaction to that quite a bit, because it's not fair. It's not what he said. It's not what he meant by what he said. And he's also not his first language. So, not sure I could, in Dutch, try and say anything at all. So anyway, we'll move on from that. Point number 2 here, Stephen. And this is where it gets kind of, we've almost touched on this already, but you're asking a question. Why has it gone so wrong so quickly? I've already mentioned it was only a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't that long ago at all. We were beating PSV to get into the Champions League. We then played very nicely, good, entertaining stuff against Ross County at home. And somehow that became almost a negative, because Celtic went out the next day and won 9-0. And it was almost, our good performance wasn't good enough anymore. But, a couple of games in a row like that, things were looking pretty positive. Suddenly, there's a complete turnaround here. I mentioned at the start of the pod that I feel as though we slightly overreacted because of where this was on the back of. But I appreciate that. Not only could I be wrong there, that I am very much in the minority with that thought. But when we're saying so wrong so quickly, this is where none of us can quite get this, can we? In the space of 2 weeks, we went from the high of qualifying and a very good performance away at PSV to this. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't think it's just the players. I think it's the management team as well. And I'll come back to that point you said there about the high of qualifying against PSV. I mean, at the moment, this team is unrecognisable to the one that was there at the latter stage of European competition last season. I said the work rate's gone, the high press is gone, organisation's gone. The mental errors that we are committing in every single game is baffling. I mean, I said that we were still getting caught out with quick throw-ins against Ajax on Wednesday, and to do that on the back of losing the goals that we did at Parkhead tells you that, I don't know, how do you correct these things? Because I'm quite sure that the manager would have approached them in team meetings, they would identify them, and the players will know that themselves. They'll know why they get turned, but we're still switching off at key moments, and that's mental errors. I think if you're looking back, you could probably question some of the desire since we won the title in a domestic sense, and maybe that's kind of eat through now to some players in the squad on a European level. I don't know, but we're now being outworked. I said earlier, the stats show that you're getting outworked in games, and that's never acceptable. You can be, Rangers fans will accept getting beat at times. They'll not be happy about it, but they'll accept it in the sense that what you'll never accept is being outworked. We expect our teams to go out and work our arses off, basically. And I think, to me, a lot of these problems, there's a lot of rumours going on about what's happening upstairs at the club, and I think there's been probably there's a clear division, it looks to me, from the outside between the director of football and the manager, because every time Van Bronckhorst picks a side, I think he's sending a message to the board, he's sending a message more to Ross Wilson, and he's also sending a message to the fans. You look at who our summer arrivals was. Borna Barisic is still left back, Sands is playing centre half, and Scott Wright is still playing right wing. And I think that's a clear indication of players like Matondo, who I would imagine would be a Ross Wilson buy. Ross Wilson seems to have a house in Belgium, or at least must like a couple of crates of Stella Artois. He's shopped there quite regularly for players. But I don't think Van Bronckhorst is happy with the quality that's been brought in, and perhaps it will enhance. As we record this, I'm sitting watching the NFL Red Zone, and there's a great saying by one of the coaches, Bill Parcells, and it says, if they want you to cook the dinner, at least they opt you shop for the groceries, or some of the groceries. And I just wonder if that's where a wee bit of the problems have come in for, because you're seeing it in the manager. That you talked about a high, Alex, of that night of qualifying from against PSV. He went from looking like a kid. See, when you were younger and you used to get told you were going to Woolworths to buy the big pick and mix with the big fudgies and the Smarties with all it, when they had good E numbers and all that kind of stuff. He was high as a kite. His last couple of interviews, he looked as if he'd been told, he was a kid that's been told Santa's dead. Some of his quotes in the aftermath of that PSV game was like, I want to win it. And now he's giving out that message. I know the message was, it's taken out of context, but we can't compete. But that's a staggering difference in a couple of weeks. So where do you get it? And you look at the Ajax wages and the wage structure now. Ajax as a club, I think, are where most teams outside the Premier League in Europe strive to be. They've got a very good transfer trading model in terms of they can buy players in for a semi-high value, and they get a good record, obviously, of selling players for high value and developing them. But you look what is getting spent on wages. For every pound that we spend in wages, Ajax spent £1.06. So what that tells you and what that tells me is we are not getting quality throughout some players in our squad. And I think that would go back to probably Van Bronckhorst's frustrations. He would be looking for a couple of players, probably players that he would have liked to have brought in. It's the skill sets he was looking for once we qualified, to give him a helping hand. And he probably feels, right now he's not getting it and he's been hung out to dry a wee bit. I don't think there's anything wrong. I said earlier, the tactics we went to Parkhead, you look at the last couple of times, we get the game in February and then that game there. You write off a wee bit of the game that came after the split because it's hard to really decipher that. But his tactics at Hampden were pretty spot on when he brought Davis on and it kind of altered the game. His tactics, from February, we started off with, attacking mid in there, and then we played 3 defensive mids last Saturday. So it's not in terms of he's changing it up in that regard, but we're not getting enough out. We're not getting enough out of the squad. Ryan Kent should probably be dropped right now, but we don't have anybody that can come in, or at least should be coming in and taking his position. There's nobody putting pressure on him. We've now spoken about Morelos, who I think the manager probably feels on a personal level extremely let down on. I think he was, winning at the start of this season. Kev talked about the quotes he made earlier. I think he was looking for him to be his talisman, to be that focal point, in the striking options and give us what we were missing at the back end of last season, especially in Seville. And I think Morelos, he let the manager down, he let his side down, he let, himself down. But he's probably pissed off at that. And he doesn't seem to be happy. His post-match interviews have been very concerning in the last couple of weeks. And I say it's only a couple of weeks ago he's talking about he wants to win it. I know that's a wee bit tongue-in-cheek, but that was a guy as high as a kite. And to go from that, a football manager's always, even when we talk about Van Bronckhorst, we always see him as very level-headed, very meticulous in his approach. But something's changed, and I just wonder if he's unhappy with what's going on above him, and he feels he's been kind of let down in that regard a wee bit, and let down by some of his players. As I said, we've got a huge squad. We're carrying 29 first-team players, but yet when players are out of form, or we're being forced to bring back people like Morelos, who the manager publicly said was out of condition a couple of weeks ago, and bring him back very hastily, certainly a lot more hastily than he would probably like to do, I think it shows you that we're not getting value for money in all key areas, and that's probably the big frustration of him and a big downfall of this team at the moment, because we can't just go and freshen away. You're not going to threaten any type of players with losing their place, because the guys that would need to come in at the back of them, haven't delivered up until this point, so you're taking a huge gamble with that.
Kev, I suspect I know where you'll go with this, but I'm going to give us or ask you the kind of slightly different view, I suppose, on this. It's been 2 games. It's been 2 horrible games, but it's been 2 games there. We can point to performance levels earlier in the season, and some of that's fair, absolutely. But that's just been 2 really, really bad games. Is it? Are we going a bit too soon here to say that things are falling apart?
I think the concern is a hangover from last year. Certainly from my point of view, right, I'm on record as saying that Van Bronckhorst was in the chair when we lost the league. Because when he came in, and you can argue about form, whatever, we were top of the league, right? We were top of the league when he came in. So I think we all accepted that Europe, it was a bit of a miracle work. We went to Isaac with no right winning. However, in the league, which is everything's fans' bread and butter, we threw it away. And we, as much as we hate to admit it, Celtic are a very good team right now. Right, this is not Neil Lennon's old guard when they were going for 10 when Ross County and stuff were taking points off them. I think we knew last year. I think a lot of people perhaps sort of laughed off Celtic when they brought in this coach we'd never heard of. They were saying a lot of people from Japan, never heard of them. The old Scottish thing, Strider up, we've never heard of them, so they're not very good. A wee bit like Stephen was talking about with Napoli. if you name Italian teams, Napoli probably wouldn't be the first one that came to mind. If you go Milan teams, Juventus, stuff like that. So you sort of write them off a wee bit. And I think people would write Celtic off last year, but when they, and as much as we hate to do it, credit them from coming behind, not giving up. They overtook us, and in the end, they blew us away a wee bit. Then come into this year, we were the first to blink, albeit with 2 men sent off, right? But we were the first to blink in the title race. Knowing fine well we had to go there for the first Old Firm game of the season. I think that put them behind the 8 ball a wee bit. So I think it's not just 2 bad results, right? Because we talk about 9 in a row, quite a lot on here, because it was the year we were brought up in. And I say there's some weeks you could go back to look at the results and say, can you imagine Twitter that week? But there was outlying performances where you would get beaten in D or you would get beat here or whatever. But generally it was fine because you brushed it off, you moved on, and you went and won the league. This year, and I say it's a combination of results, performances that for me were a year down the line, and we still don't really know what Van Bronckhorst's style of play is. This term, and I mentioned it last week, it's getting thrown about now, is horseshoe football. Where you've got one wing back to the centre backs, up the other wing and then just back, and you don't actually go anywhere. And you do see quite a lot of it. Last season we probably get a bit of leeway because we never had a real striker for the running. We had to play Joe Rebo up there quite a lot, which again should have said to us as a support and the board where we really need to strengthen. And I know we brought in Cholak, and it's always very hard, I think, to recruit people when you've got people in the positions, because with Alfie, who's coming back from injury, so you're like, okay, we don't need 3 or 4 players in there. You've got Roof, who's coming back from injury. So how many strikers do you bring in? So it is very, very tough. But as I say, I just think it's a lot of things. Stephen mentioned recruitment. I've mentioned the fact that they overtook us last year and they don't show any signs of letting up. As I say, had Celtic won the league by 4 points last year, but we were very close and reached the European final, it's a different narrative. Celtic really blew us away towards the end of last year. This year, they've showed no signs of letting up. You mentioned earlier, we won 4-0, so we're thinking, oh, well, we've done quite well. Good, that the ball's in their court. Let's see how they handle it. They're going to score 9 goals. Now, albeit it's against Dundee United, who were under Jack Ross at that time. And I think they got a team, guys from the pod, to put 9 past that side because they had definitely chucked it. But still, it's a 9-0 doing. And then we come on to the 2 4-0s back to back. I say, if you look through history, I think somebody said to me it was like 1983 the last time we conceded two 4s in a row. And I want to say both were at Aberdeen, but I know somebody will correct me. So I just think it's a combination of things. Worries. If people have worries when you're winning things, there's sort of silence and you can mute them. But as Stephen said, but we're having to go back to the old guard, Arfield, Jack, Davis. I'm on record as saying that I wouldn't have re-signed Arfield and Davis. I would have re-signed maybe one of them. So that's where I sort of, Stephen mentioned some of the signings coming in. Like, I don't think Van Bronckhorst is a fan of Sakala. He's not his type of player. There's others. And I think the main reason strikers we've got, I think we counted it last week, we've got like $100,000 a week on wages sitting in the stand with Ben Davies, Kamar Roof, Hillander. There's others that you can name that we're just not getting the value for. So that always sort of skews your figures. When Stephen made a great point about how much Ajax spend in wages compared to us. But if they're getting people on the pitch playing, you know what I mean, it's worth 10 times what we're paying because we're getting nothing out of these guys for whatever reason. And I'm not going to go about why they're out. I'm just saying that we've got far too many out not contributing on the pitch when we really need them. So we're having to go back to the old guard. And I say Stephen Davis is another year older. Ryan Jack looks a shadow of the player he was. and Scott Arfield, I think we'll all admit that Arfield does his best work coming off the bench as an impact player now. I really don't know what the answer is and how we go about turning it around, but we do face an uphill struggle, and I don't think anyone would sit here and say, "Oh, we've got all this money in the bank for whatever, we need to go out and spend it." I don't think people are wanting that. I think people are just wanting to see, like, had we signed, I think maybe you tried it last week on the show, if we'd signed Ben Davies in the last day of the transfer window, or if we'd signed Tom Lawrence or something on the last day, even if it's a free transfer or something, that just gives people a wee lift because they think you're adding to your squad. Like, it's all perception is reality, as I say. If you're perceived to be going out and being proactive, then you get a bit of leeway. But from us as supporters looking in, it looks like the board have just said, right, we've made the Champions League, that's it done. Who cares? We'll just bank the money and we'll move on. When it's a whole lot more complex than that. But it's just the perception of everything about the club just now.
It's kind of funny when it comes to the transfer window and Champions League qualifiers, because I know a number of Rangers fans who will scream and shout that we need to get people in early because we've got these Champions League qualifiers coming. And the same people will then scream and shout, once we've qualified, that we're not signing anybody else, even though we wanted all the business done early. One thing I will say to this, and if I am of, you know me guys, right? I'm eternal optimist when it comes to Rangers, I suppose, and I'm of this opinion. Firstly, I don't think Van Bronckhorst is, completely scunnered by the situation, because he'll have been involved in every conversation and he'll know better than us what happened, and he'll probably know, there were reports of potential moves for players that never came off because sales never happened. It is more than justifiable to say to a manager, we've got this wage bill, we've got 29 players, and Van Bronckhorst has been quite clear in this as well. After the Yilmaz signing, he said, that's us done unless we sell someone. We never sold anybody, so we never brought anybody in. And he was quite clear about that at that point. I don't think it's unfair at all for Ross Wilson to say to Van Bronckhorst at this stage, right, okay, you've lost some good players there. You knew that was going to be the case. This is the buy low, sell high model. This is what we're looking for. This is what we wanted to do. You knew that when you came in. There's no way he was sold a dummy that way, There's no way he was told in any interviews, we're looking to splash of cash and build a really strong squad that way. That was never going to be the case. He was brought in to coach players, make them better, work with youngsters, all that sort of stuff. He's known all that. There's no way he doesn't know that, right? I can understand your point, Stephen, how he's been looking two post-match interviews after 4-0 defeats. If he comes out positive, he probably takes an absolute pilloring from us as fans anyway. I can understand him being, kind of quite modelling, for want of a better word, after games like that. But I don't think it's unfair for us to say, look, we spent a bit of money on players. We spent roughly 11 million, potential with that getting up to 15 if the add-ons happen. You've been giving guys like Yilmaz, who was quite highly rated, and people were describing that. People who knew football better than me were saying that's the sort of deal I would never have thought was possible this time last year. Getting a player of his potential. Matondo cost over 10 million for Schalke not that long ago. We got him for 3 million quid. They boys are like 22-year-old. There's plenty of improvement in them.
But I think but I think the issue then is the players that we're identifying and bringing in, they're not making an impact on the starting 11 at the moment. At the moment, no. And by the time that they do make an impact, realistically, the league could be almost all but gone if we drop any more points. And this Champions League group could be gone in Wednesday night if we don't get something out of it, more or less. So they guys have came in and not played a part really in getting us to the Champions League. They haven't featured in the qualifiers. And not featured in the Champions League, and they end up playing at basically the arse end of games when things are perhaps not there to be played for. That's not good recruitment. If you're bringing,
that depends on your point of view, Stephen. That's a very short-term point of view.
Yeah, but
you signed these guys for 4 seasons, not for 4 months. Do you know what I mean? We gave these guys 4 or 5 year contracts, not just a season.
Yeah, but they're still not making an impact domestically. I think no matter who you bring, if you're bringing guys into Scottish football for in excess of 3 million, which is good money, then you're expecting them to have an impact domestic. I could take the point in Champions League. You could eat players in. You could say that all players in the position are more experienced. I think most fans would stomach that. But at the moment, only Cholak has been the one that's, played in a high percentage of games. The other ones, Lawrence, you would say, been unlucky with injury. He would have certainly featured. But for all the other signs, has hardly been any sightings of them at all. And that's the most frustrating and disappointing thing. That's what we needed. We needed our first 11 strengthened, not just the squad. And I think you're looking at it now, and they guys, you don't know if they're going to come in. You're talking about Matondo there. If he starts on Wednesday, I don't think anybody has any idea what we're going to get out of him.
No, they don't, and this is where I'm kind of going with this. We can't do what Ajax do. We can't sell players for vast amounts of money and then go and spend vast amounts of money to bring players in, because Ajax have changed their model a bit in recent years. If you look at their spending, they're not so reliant upon youngsters. Wasn't that? People were saying when Ajax were linked with Bassi at the price they eventually sold them at, people were saying there's no chance that'd be one of their highest ever transfers. No way are they coming in with that sort of money for Bassi. But they've changed their model a little bit because they made so much money this summer they could do that. But we can't. We lose a player for £20 million. We can't go and spend 10 on his replacement. We don't have it. We'll never be able to do that as long as we stay in Scottish football. So that we need to understand there's going to be steps back anytime we sell big players. That's no matter how good your recruitment is. If you don't have the money to replace a £20 million player with a £20 million player, then you're going back away. And that's where we're at right now. We've went back the way. So these guys are struggling to get in ahead of players that are more established. But once they're established, the hope is they'll be even better. But it's not going to happen straight away.
But none of us would have had Calvin Bassey in a Rangers first 11 before November.
No, we wouldn't have, and that's my point, Stephen, is none of us right now, Yilmaz, Matondo, Tillman to an extent. I mean, his performances have been a mixed bag. Some of them brilliant, some of them anonymous. These are guys who you might not have in your strongest 11. Tillman, you probably would. You wouldn't have them in your strongest 11 just now. That doesn't mean come November, December, they won't be in there. Well, not this year because November, December will be off. But you know what I mean? None of us would have done that with Bassey. And I don't think it's unfair to say to Ivan Bronckhorst, you've got a big squad here. You've got players that have got plenty of potential. Players coming back from injury as well. Guys like Hadji, Morelos, eventually once Morelos gets his finger out, who aren't exactly injury prone. You know, it's a bad one that Hadji's taken. We don't know how he's going to react. Morelos, unfortunately, hasn't come back the way he should have. So you could, I think Van Bronckhorst can rightly say, look, I can't rely on Haaland or a Roof. They're injured all the time. Ryan Jack's body's letting them down. Fair enough, but that's not the whole squad like that. I don't think it's unfair for our club to be saying to Van Bronckhorst right now, we've given you a decent wee squad here, coach them, go and make them better. Sometimes that's going to need patience though, and that's where us as fans, we're not used to that. Let's be honest, we're not used to it. We've never done it before to any sort of extent. And we are, hell, even just the notion that we're not winning things domestically but doing all right in Europe blows our minds, never mind anything else. So, I think personally, and this is just my personal opinion, and again, guys, I know that it's always tinted by, because Alex talking, right, I know that I get that, but I think a lot of what we are seeing in terms of negativity is a lack of patience. And I don't necessarily mean that as a negative, it's just that you summed it up right there, Stephen. When Calvin Bassey get caught, along with Nathan Patterson, when they get caught with the whole COVID party thing, when people were talking about we should just sack them, nobody was saying, at that point people were sticking up for Patterson because we knew what sort of talent he had. But at that point nobody was saying we better keep hold of Bassey, that's a £20 million player. There was never an argument for that. So it shows you how quickly these things can turn around. And it's a bit harsh. I think a lot of us have written off guys like Matondo already, and it's a bit harsh. But I think Ross Wilson can quite rightly say, look, that is a coachable player. That's a guy that can be improved. He'd loads of potential. Yeah, it hasn't quite worked out from where he was, but he's got Van Bronckhorst would have been involved in the conversations for him to come in the door. Go and coach him. Go and make him better. If he's genuinely, sorry, I'm a big Van Bronckhorst fan, I think he will turn this around, but if he is genuinely playing Scott right ahead of Matondo to make a message, that's stupidity, and I wouldn't want him still in the manager's role then. I don't think that's what he's doing. But, I think all of us, including the fans are going to need to probably reassess this a year from now. Some of these guys will have kicked on from then, others will have faded away. And I get that's no good if we end up blowing it and having a season to forget this season. Absolutely, I understand that. But I also don't think it's worth saying that he's not been backed or anything like that, because 6 months from now we might have a completely different view on it. Hell, a month ago we had a completely different view on it. When we beat West Ham in the friendly, everybody had a different view on our signings. It shows you how quickly these things turn around. So yeah, I think maybe when we say gone so wrong, I'm just slightly worried that's the overreaction bit for me. But anyway, that's just my take on it, guys. I don't want to make it sound as though I'm trampling all over you. I absolutely take your points on board. Point number 3 here, Stephen. This is the one that I find kind of most interesting. Sounds slightly wrong. I don't mean it that way. But point 3, has the break, due to the tragic and unforeseen circumstances, presented us with a rare opportunity to regroup. The one area, not the one, but the biggest concern I had was we were looking at a stage of game after game after game, midweek, weekend, all the way up to this break in November. We didn't have a time to breathe. We didn't have time to get everybody in the training ground, fight it. Do you know what I mean? We didn't even have time to get everybody in a team meeting and knock lumps at each other to get some of the frustration out. You know, we barely had time for that. It would have just been game recovery. That weekend has almost given us a slight chance to just breathe, hasn't it?
I think it's given everybody, and include the fans, a chance to breathe as well, because it was getting a wee bit stuffy and stifled when you turn in back-to-back performances and results like we did. Then there is going to be that air of negativity. There is going to be that air of frustration from the supporters. But I think for the players, you hit the nail right in the head there. You know, when we weren't getting the opportunity to correct our mistakes, because to do that you need time and you need patience on that training pitch. And we were, by the time you take into factors of coming back from Amsterdam, then travelling to Pittodrie, you're lucky if you've got one light training session. And because of the nature of the game that we just played, it would be that very almost a walkthrough kind of session, just to keep the players ticking over. We also were going into it with injury concerns, most notably for captain, and we don't really have, we don't have an experienced right back, but you were going to have to ask King or Devine to step in there and play that position. A very difficult venue for them. So, yeah, I think for everybody, it's a chance to kind of regroup. Hopefully the players take away. And look, one thing we've always said that Van Bronckhorst's got a good strength in is scouting. We're going to find out in the next couple of days and in coming weeks how good that self-scouting is. We've identified the faults here. My biggest worry is that, I think when we done one of these first pods at the start of the season, I said one of my hopes was he'd corrected the set piece situation and how vulnerable we are from it. He hasn't, but there might be other ways he can go and tweak it at the moment in the short term. How else can he work with the players? He's very much a training ground manager. So if the extra days will be put to good use, I think. And I think just for the supporters as well, for the likes of ourselves, if we'd went into it, I think we'd have went up to Pittodrie and won. I really do. I've got opinions in Aberdeen, and I don't think they're, despite their league position, I think they're flat to deceive a wee bit. But I think we done up there and got the victory. But it's still a game that you're going to be involved in, a mental test in it, and a very physical game, and then coming on to this type of fixture. So I think for the supporters, for the management, for the players, it's probably, I don't want to say a welcome break because of the circumstances that surround it, but on a purely footballing point of view, because of the way the fixture calendar is up until the World Cup. And I know we're having an international break coming up as well, but we were in, when you're in results that we're having, sometimes getting taken out the final line and just having that chance to take a wee step back, analyse it, and then be able to correct your mistakes is all that you need to really set yourself and go again. And look, when the season shut down for COVID a couple of years back, we were the best at dealing with that situation. We were the best in coping with it. That's why we came out so strongly and then went on to win the league the following year, because of how we managed that situation. So there's plenty of experience and precedent, obviously not a far larger scale, but you have to use it as an opportunity, and I think we will.
Kev, recently we had the situation, the PSV games, where PSV had the weekend off in between the two games against them. We were away at Easter Road. It was a horrible game, obviously. We'd gone down to 9 men in the rather ludicrous way that we did, both refereeing and our own decisions that way. But when we're going away to Eindhoven, everybody thought that was going to be a major factor. We've played at the weekend; they haven't. They'll be more rested. We look like the stronger, more fit side. Is there? Do you agree with Stephen here that break has been a welcome one, or do you think the players would have wanted to have had the Aberdeen game on the Saturday to try and get things out of their system? Which way do you think that's went? Because, as you said, it's been since the early 80s since Rangers have let in 4 goals in consecutive games like this. It's a long time. As much as people say, "Oh, this squad's continually doing things like that," not like that. This has been quite a when Celtic beat us in February, our next game was Hearts at home and we won 5-0. For example, so it hasn't been a constant thing. Has it been good to get the break that way from a purely footballing perspective, as Stephen said, or do you think the players needed the game against Aberdeen?
I'm going to sit in the fence a wee bit and say we're going to find out. I think had it been at home, it might have been a benefit to us because we know what Aberdeen are like when they play Rangers, especially at Pittodrie. They up their game, and I think a wee bit more highly of Aberdeen than Stephen does. That they're not Aberdeen are Alex Ferguson by any stretch of the imagination, but they're certainly a lot better than they were last year, and we struggled against them last year. So I think we could have probably done without going to Pittodrie. I say if it was a home game, I really think we'd have preferred the fixture. But just because of going up there, with the way their fans are against us, I do probably think the break helped us. I hope that the game against the United is on next week. We don't know yet with our arrangements, obviously, if that's going to go ahead on Saturday. Pretty much day to day right now when it comes to football fixtures. I really hope that one was on because I think we desperately need a home game against and this is going to sound bad, right? A beatable opponent. But I think we really need a game against a team that we should be beating. Whether or not the United will have a manager in by then, we don't know. We can't control that. But the United is a team that we should be looking to beat, and dare I say comfortably. But yeah, I do think the break, if we used it correctly, that's a big one. If we've sat down, if we've aired our grievances, because you know what it's like, Schreider, sometimes when you work with people, you can't always say what you want to say to them, especially if you're just day in, day out, work's really, really busy. And day-to-day life, you're really, really busy, and someone keeps making a mess of something, you don't ever have the right time to bring it up to them what's going wrong. But yeah, if the work climbs down, we could actually maybe have a discussion with somebody and say, look, I'm not happy with the way you're doing this. And then they might say, oh, I didn't know there was any other way, or what we would prefer to do it. And that might be the same in the football pitch. I know we've got new players coming in, but even the senior players could go to the manager and say, look, we're not really happy with the way we're defending set pieces. We don't have lads that are big enough to compete, especially when people are getting the run on us. So we don't know if these types of conversations are happening, whether it's with the manager, whether it's with the coaches that are taking the set piece training sessions. Who knows? I say so. This break, it might do us a world of good. As unfortunate the circumstances are, of course, but we're just talking about football here because that's Parkhead we've been to. Then we were flying out to Holland. Then we're back, and then we're going right up to Aberdeen. Then we're right in a game against Napoli. So there was literally there was no time to do anything. All these game plans would have been worked out weeks ago, as Stephen said. So this mini wee break is as tragic as it's been. Hopefully, we have taken the best of the situation and we've worked on things. We've had discussions, whether that be with players that are maybe lacking a wee bit of confidence, like Ken, people who've done okay, like Sands, to encourage him. Because I know he wasn't great against Ajax, but then again, who was? And I say there's people like John McLaughlin that might just need to be arm around the shoulder because he's been a wee bit up and down, but he made a howler last weekend. So yeah, I'd hope that we have used the break to the best of our ability, and I say discuss some things, work on some things, and get back to what we're good at. Because you mentioned that this is not a bad squad. This is a squad that for the most part, reached the European final last year. Albeit we've not looked like in the last 2 games, but this is still a very capable squad, and I think that's another reason why people are so annoyed and upset with it, because this is not Russell Martin and Graham Dorrans and stuff like that running about a pitch trying to catch people that are years younger and much fitter than them. You know what I mean? This is a good squad with good players in it. Sometimes we need to realise how good we are and just get back to the things that we are really, really good at.
Speaking of the squad then, Stephen, let's move on to point number 4, the one we always use to pick our teams. For any new listeners, you may have already gathered, but we're recording this on the Sunday night. It goes out to you on the Monday, but we obviously haven't had any press conferences or any injury updates. So the question you've asked here, Stephen, does Tavernier make it? We know he came off at half-time against Ajax with the ice pack. We haven't seen any training pictures, training videos. We may not see them until the Tuesday, given the game's now been moved to the Wednesday. What's your expected starting 11 and allow you to pick 2 players for that right-back role as such?
Yeah, I'll go for McLaughlin in goals. I think Tab will make it unless something changed dramatically in the last couple of days. I think it looked like more a precaution than anything. I think if we were still in that game, he would have remained on the pitch for the second half. So I'm going to just take it from that he'll play. If he doesn't, I think it'd be Leon King that comes in there. I've got Goldson. I think it'll still be Sands at centre half. With Davies, even I know he was back in the bench, but he's not played a lot of football. But yeah, again, I don't know if we could possibly arrange something to try and help him with that. But I haven't seen anything, so I'm going to take Sands still in there. Barisic at left back. Lundstrom, I think Davis will come in beside him. I think it'll be Kane, Tillman. I'm going to go for Matondo getting a start. And the only other position I'm kind of toying between is Morelos, I think. Look, I was very clear what I thought about the situation and what I probably still think should happen in the long term. But in these type of fixtures, you need somebody that's able to get you up the field, win you the free kicks up there, and just really affect the game when you need to get up the pitch a wee bit. And I think he makes such a difference. So, you know what, I'm going to go for Morelos coming back for it, try and get a wee bit of redemption starting the game, because we could use him in a game like this.
Kev, what's your expected starting 11?
I think Tav makes it. I agree with Stephen's assessment. I think if that's 2-1 or 1-0, then we keep Tav on, but the game was done, so there's no point in aggravating an injury. So I will go with Tav. Should he not make it, I think we should be bold and give Devine the start. We could play Leon King out there because I think he's played differently across that back line. But I wonder if we would be tempted to put Leon King in, just for his pure defensive ability. Because I think we might go for a back 3. So I'm going to go with Tav, Goldson, Sands, King, Barisic. Again, Sands could move up if need be, but I suspect that we won't be out too much on this game. Again, I think I've got Stephen Davis in there because really I think he's the only option. Kamara has really not impressed recently. Ryan Jack looks so far off it. So I've got Davis, Lundstrom and Tillman, and a 2-ish up front. I think it will just be Cholak we stick with Ryan Kent just sort of sitting off and floating, try to pick up the ball and get out as far as we can.
The old 5-3-2, Kev. You are determined to get that back 3 back quite a bit. No, I think very similar team to Stevens for me. McLaughlin in goals. If Tav doesn't make it, I think Leon King's a shoe-in actually. If Tav doesn't make it, I think King looks more ready for it. And I actually think if he had to be given a run at right back, I think King would impress us personally. But if he has to play this one, it'll be him over Devine. But I suspect Tav will make it, as you guys say. I'm going to go for a couple of changes. I think Ben Davies will come in. Goldson, Ben Davies and Barisic. Lundstrom and Kamara as a midfield. Matondo on the right, because I think it's time we just gave him a run. I think there are little elements of that, by the fact that that Wright came off at half time in that game and Matondo was thrown on. I think Gio does want to get him out there. He's just not done enough to cement a place, but I think, you might see him start this one. Matondo on the right, Kent on the left, and Cholak up front. I don't think Morelos is anywhere near ready starting yet, and I hope I'm wrong about that. I really do. I'd love Morelos to come in. The Morelos that Stephen describes would be brilliant, but everything we've seen so far suggests he's not that Morelos right now, so that's part of the problem, and that's why I don't think he's ready to start yet. Point number 5, Stephen, is it kind of win or bust here? Is this one of these games, in this group where we either see off Naples or die, as you put it? What's your score prediction?
I'm going to go for 2 each. I think we'll take something from the game. I think the fact, look, we talked earlier about having that breathing space and having a week. I think it makes a difference to the crowd as well, because had we went to Pittodrie and not got the victory, then it would be a very negative crowd probably coming in on the Tuesday night game. But now we're all dying to get back to a game. We're all looking forward to it. It's the Champions League. It's our first home match in quite some time. So all the factors. And look, these players, they have to turn the tide somehow in some way, and they reserve their best performances for Europe, as I said earlier. So I'm going to go for 2 each. It's still an almighty task against a very, very good team, but they're not quite the force they are at home. And I think we'll get a credible result in this fixture.
Kev?
That's far more positive than I'm thinking. I think this team will be far too good for us again. Pains me to say it, but I think this is a 3-0 defeat. I'd love Steven to be right. Absolutely love it. But just the manner in which we've been conceding goals lately, I think it's a trend that we'll need to stop domestically before we stop in Europe. So, no, 3-0 Napoli for me, I'm afraid.
I'm going to go 1 each rather than 2 each. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Was tempted to say that we'll nick it, but I said that last week and was wildly wrong. No, I think we've got enough in us to get a draw in this one. I think that, as crazy as it sounds, Napoli will see us as the weakest team in the group, but I also think they would. I think if it was sitting 1 each with 10 minutes to go, I think both teams would be pretty happy with that. So one of those type of situations. So yeah, I think a 1-1 draw for me. Gentlemen, before we go, is there anything that you think we have forgot to mention, or anything else you'd like to add to what is, when it comes to the flagship pod, with this one taking the place of that, it's a bumper pod in general, never mind for a preview, for the time taken. So anything else you'd like to add to this?
Nope.
I think we're good. We're good.
And
yes, I hope everyone who's listened. Yes, I was just about to say, I hope everyone who's listened, if you've made it this far. Yeah. And Patreon, yeah, that's exactly what Kev is saying there. We tend to, it goes on a little bit, and we apologise for that quite often, but then we end up doing it again, so we obviously must love it. But yes, I hope you've enjoyed the pod. If you'd like to hear more of ourselves previewing games in the future, or even I don't know why anybody would want to go back and listen to previous ones, but there you go, unless they just want to find something we've said and dig us up for it. Wouldn't be unfair. But yeah, if you'd like to hear more preview pods in the future, or various other content, as David lets you know every single week, patreon.com, find Heart and Hand on there. The prices are, for the content you are given, absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. And I know it's a cost of living crisis at the moment, but trust me, if you're looking for value for money, that is absolutely worth it. And all that remains now is for me to firstly thank my wonderful co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Harrigan.
Thank you very much, gents.
Mr. Kevin Armstrong.
Thank you, gentlemen, and we're not usually that negative.
And to thank each and every one of you, our listeners. We'll be back very shortly. Well, actually, we say very shortly. We're waiting in confirmation if we'll be back very shortly to speak about the Dundee United game at the weekend. I think that football might find itself under a bit of pressure to get the fixtures played. So if I had to make a prediction right now, it would be that the game will be going ahead. But we will await confirmation on that. I hope you have an awesome Wednesday night. Far better than the last couple of games have been, hopefully. And we will speak to you soon. Thank you.